Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for keeping you waiting for that long. We begin with the second session of the day. I believe everybody's had their sumptuous lunch and won't be sleeping for this session because we won't let you sleep. So the session is Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage. May I please call upon the session moderator, Dr. Rashi Gupta, Managing Director at Vision Mechatronics. Dr. Rashi, please. May I please call upon Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, VP System Operation, Power Markets and Head Renewables, Smart and DSM Projects, BSES. Dr. Y.B.K. Reddy, Additional General Manager, Solar Energy Corporation of India. Mr. Milan Kumar, Head Special Initiatives, Renewable Business L&T Limited. Mr. P.K. Banerjee, Executive Director, SIAM. Mr. Weber Pratap Singh, Program Lead, CEW. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Ms. Mani Khurana, Lead World Bank Battery Storage Program, joining us virtually. Dr. Rashi, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitji. It's a pleasure to finally, after 18 months, meet all of you here physically for this event and all my esteemed co-panelists. It's indeed a very nice topic where we talk about transformation of energy storage and EVs, which is the core today for decarbonization, and that will lead us to the transformation of the power sector and energy sector, which we all need today. We need to have more renewables added. So I would like to first open the session with opening remarks from Mani, and then Mani Khurana from World Bank, and then we would have an esteemed, very special guest today, who's the Police Commissioner of Noida. He would also join us in a bit. So over to you, Mani.
Thank you, Rashi. Thank you for having me here. A very good hello, and all people who are there in person. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to be there in person, but very happy to join you virtually. As anyone who knows about the World Bank, we all know that RE has to increase. It's inevitable. The prices have fallen down. And we can easily see it competing with the existing technologies. We know it will go up to 55% of the total capacity by 2030. We also, and I'm sure heard enough sessions by now about what does RE mean, about the variability it has, it is not dispatchable, and then how do you take care of it? How do you make sure that you find a solution to that problem? And that is where I feel that batteries will play a very integral part in the years to come. We've seen a huge decline in the battery prices. We hope it will continue to decline further, but all the estimates and all the studies that are going on very clearly show that by 2030, let's not go by figures, but it ranges from 27 gigawatts to 60 gigawatts. You will need batteries in the system. So it's a huge number. But till now, we have a few pilots which have been done in India. It's not taken up the way we had expected it to, or we had hoped it would do. And, seeing the potential of battery storage, and obviously a battery is an integral part to EVs, and EVs we've seen FAME 1, we've seen FAME 2, we've recently seen the amendments to FAME 2. So there's a push from the government, there's a need of the hour to go towards renewable energy, whether we're talking about automobiles or we're talking about a power sector. For that, the government launched the National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage. They've also announced the PLI scheme, which I'm sure the panel will discuss today in detail as well. So when that was announced, and the PLI scheme was also announced for manufacturing, we in World Bank received a request from Department of Economic Affairs to basically help NITI Aayog, which is chairing the Interministerial Ministry or Committee on Battery Storage and Transformative Mobility, first to help them understand the market, the demand in the market, understand what are the policy and regulatory interventions which are required so that you can monetize and facilitate this market. Also understand the standards, the testing. Is the testing framework in place? What needs to be done in that? What will happen once those batteries have been used? Can they be recycled? Can they be repurposed? Or how will you take them? So coming to the question of the circular economy. And these are the elements which have to be considered, the entire ecosystem. And obviously there's the financing need. Right now, the financing is limited. It's a new technology. Whenever a new technology comes up, we see high interest rate because it's not proven till now, and we can't foresee what problems will come up. So World Bank is actually working with Government of India to put in place a line of credit for battery storage and for charging infrastructure. There are also discussions of another program where we look at something called a risk-sharing facility for financing 2 and 3 e-wheelers. So all that is being discussed. It's all in the preparation phase. And therefore, I love attending these meetings so that when I hear your discussion, I get some inputs as to how to feed it into the preparation of the project. So anything I hear today will be very welcome, and I'll be happy to discuss with people who have ideas even later for this, basically facilitating this market. Over to you for a good discussion, Rashi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mani, for that insights from World Bank. So let's not wait anymore, and let's begin with the discussion for the most happening energy storage and EV segment and how we look to transform it. So I have with me here Abhishek Ranjanji, VP System Operations, Power Markets and Head Renewables and Smart DSM Projects from BSES. So my first question to you is, in view of the recent urban microgrid commissionings, how do you see the sector and the DISCOM's willingness and adaptability to such microgrids?
Thank you, Rashiji, and thanks for inviting me here. Very recently, we inaugurated a demonstration project that was 466 kilowatt hour storage and 100 kilowatt rooftop, along with a carport, that is EV charging. So these kind of grid-connected microgrids are very important for us to deliver ancillary services at the MV level or medium voltage level, in terms of peak shaving, load leveling, and also providing reliable power supply, which is already reliable in the city of Delhi. Apart from this, we are already implementing at least 7 locations of distribution transformers, the battery storage connected on the low voltage side of it. Now, these have been planned 2 years back, and now they are under implementation. Probably by the end of this month, we'll be having all of them on board. The idea is to provide virtual distribution through these non-wired assets. So, and then the cost benefit analysis that we did, obviously all the 7 locations today, the whatever value stacking that we are doing is not coming profitable, but then at least 2 locations were there which was coming profitable because of the load shaping, capex deferral, RE firming, and energy arbitrage. These 3 or 4 values were able to. The point is, these when come up with scale, today we are at some price point, as Mani also told that the prices are coming down. On its own, the current value stack and the prices coming down in the next 2 to 3 years, we see that these battery energy storage systems will be administered or admitted by the honorable commissions across the country as a distribution system component. Just like we have transformers, power transformers or distribution transformers. Now these also have a very important aspect of grid level balancing and islanding scheme. So that is the next one which we are trying, and I think I can talk about that in later. Thank you.
Great. So we got insights on the urban microgrid, the recent project commission. Now with this, also we very recently know that Government of India has made an announcement for a 4 gigawatt energy storage is what they're looking at in coupled with renewable energies. So my next question is to Dr. YBK Reddy, who's Additional General Manager from SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India. So, sir, I would want you to highlight on that the government has made a very recent announcement of the 4 gigawatt and SECI has announced a 2 gigawatt. So, where do you think the business cases of the battery energy storage exist and what is the present and the future that we look at?
Thank you, madam. The question is the 4 gigawatt and 2 gigawatt announcements. So regarding 4 gigawatt announcement, government has formed a high-level committee where all the regulator, system operator, SECI, many constituents are there in the committee who are linked with the system actually, central transmission system. So we have been discussing on various opportunities to install the battery storage. First at the generation side, which we have already started, we have already announced some projects. We ourselves as investor we are doing, and also as a part of scheme management we are doing at generation side. The other one is at the standalone storage facility in the transmission network, mainly to address the ancillary services and to address the curtailment problems of the various DISCOMs that we are working on, and we are planning to release a RFS also quickly for that. And the other one is that transmission utilization is one thing. Madam Manikurana was also saying that if the RE sector with the RE is increasing in the network, we need to work on the RE farming type of issues. In addition to the farming, the utilization of the transmission network is a big challenge. So we are spending crores of money, even though it is the charges are waived off for the developers, but DISCOMs are paying, and we are spending a lot of money on that. So the utilization of that transmission network is a big challenge actually. So right now we are using only in any of RE project maximum of 30% we are utilizing. So we, with the help of battery storage, what we are planning is we want to improve the utilization to 60 to 70%. So for that also we almost done the homework, and that type of tender also will be launching soon. That is one thing. And also, as Abhishek was saying, that in the distribution network also some capacities will come. As a part of 4 gigawatts, some capacity we are planning for in the distribution network also. We have already done some internal studies with some consultants also. But the cost is more, the Abhishek was saying that regulators are not taking it as a constituent element of the distribution network, how to pass on the costs of that. Okay, all these things we need to address. Once we address that in the distribution level also, we can see the energy storage in big way. All these three sides, generation, transmission and distribution sides, all the sides we want to we must have the energy storage. Then only we can have a flexibility in operation in future with increasing renewables of 450 gigawatt by 2030. Madam was saying that around 28 to 60. With our analysis, it is even more than 60. It is even 100 plus gigawatt also by 2030. So only thing is that we have to see that we have to kickstart the developments. Like in RE, we kickstarted that from 17 rupees to 3 rupees or 2 rupees. The cost has fallen down. In the same way, we are anticipating that once we create the business and ecosystem in the country, that will come down. That's why we also came out with gigawatt scale announcement. So these tenders will be out soon. The market will be developed with these tenders. We can see some price reduction also in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, and for giving the insights on what the government is actually thinking and how we can actually see a lot of adoption of energy storage coming in. So with such big tenders and a gigawatt scale battery storage is what we are looking at, then the question comes is of the financial modeling. And financial modeling is directly dependent to the life cycles of the batteries that we are looking to install for this gigawatt scale energy storage. So my next question would be to Milind Kumarji, who is the head Special Initiatives BESS New Energy from L&T Business. Sir, so the whole financing, like I said, depends on the cycle life of the batteries. So when we talk of the cycle life, how do you think we can have some assurity of this in the megawatt and the gigawatt scale? Because the whole game would depend on the life cycle. If you cannot achieve the life cycle, then the ROI would not mean. So how do you think India needs to progress in terms of achieving the assurity of the commitments that has been made, and how do you think L&T would be supporting this?
Good afternoon to everyone present here, and Dr. Rasi, thanks for this question, which is very, very important and staring to all of us in the fraternity. Battery energy storage being very new, definitely there is bound to be such questions on its reliability, performance, life cycle. But the basics remain the same. We have to play by the same basic rules, that we have to start with quality engineering, quality sourcing, and quality integration besides quality installation. And this technology, is also very, very evolving technology. Today we hear about air cooled, but then the transition is happening to the liquid cooled. But of course, the crux of the longevity and assurance of performance and delivery of the desired expectations from the asset will to a great extent depend upon how careful we are in specifying them, how careful we are into monitoring them and delivering on those performances. So L&T per se sees itself, L&T is, I will say, synonymous with infrastructure. And here we are seeing that we will be one of the enablers in this journey. And as a first step, we have created our own factory for container integration of these batteries near Chennai, which has capacity to deliver up to 1 gigawatt hours per year of battery container solutions. And this facility we have accordingly created to meet the international expectations, not just in terms of integration, but testing before it goes out of the facility. So we can create the entire situation like grid, load, solar, battery, everything. And this whole simulation can be done at factory and witnessed by the end user before it goes out. And then we hope that this will going to bring lot of assurance to the performance of the equipment delivered.
That's fantastic. So now when we are talking of life cycles and we are talking of financing, let's quickly move to Vaibhav Pratap Singh ji, program lead from CEEW. What are the important factors that we can consider for financing of storage and EVs?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Rashi. Hello. So thanks, Dr. Rashi, for the question. And good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for inviting me over here. So before I delve into the financing aspects of storage or EVs, so if you look at how EVs are functioning or what are the EV categories that really need financing at the moment. So EVs, if you look, need financing for which cases? These are the cases that require basically two-wheelers, three-wheelers at the moment are commercially viable, and even four-wheeler in some of the cases. So these are the use cases where you have a commercial driven operation beyond certain range, let's say 60, 70 kilometers. It could be Swiggy delivery guys, it could be any Uber guy who could just use these options. And it would make sense. Why? Just because EVs are operationally cheap to run. So you could run them at less than 1 rupee per kilometer. So that's the aspect. But why the adoption is not happening is because of the very reason that the financing is not available. And why financing is not available? If you look at it through the lens of a banker or a financier, you don't know the product. You don't know the viability and how long it will last out there. So nobody knows how long, so EV or a normal vehicle that is bound to last for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, in cases of bus, 15, 20 years. But you don't know there is no second-hand market. So this leads to some of the solutions that could be out there that Ms. Mani also referred to over a risk-sharing facility that could allow financiers to share the risk and take a plunge into the market. That allow a Swiggy guy to accept, that allows a Swiggy guy to just make use of the finance available. So they will recover the cost by easier operation. So less than a few paisa per kilometer they could run the vehicle and they would be able to recover the cost easily. But if you look at, just to give you the reference of a Swiggy guy, they don't have any formal income. They own their own vehicle and they won't be able to show a salary slip. So the banks won't be able to. So the role of a risk sharing facility or something on those lines would be really, really important. And similarly for the battery storage, if we move into the direction of battery storage, the use cases today that are really commercially viable are some of those lines that discoms could deploy. But here there is a challenge on the policy side, where you could see that Abhishek installing today a battery out there won't be able to pass it through their tariff orders, just because the policy does not allow. So the financing that could come in and could provide a lot of benefits that he referred to over here is not available, just because you can't pass it through to your consumers. So maybe I can just cut it short over here and maybe we can take it over later in the section. Thanks.
I could see Abhishek ji nodding his head. So do you want to make a comment on this? Quick comment?
No, so in Delhi, one thing, good thing has happened is Honorable Commission has allowed at 6 locations, which we are commissioning under the ARR. So they have allowed that. And probably this is the first regulatory commission in the country which would have done so, to the best of my knowledge. So what I see is that there are multiple regulators who are very forward looking. And I firmly believe that Delhi is one of them. So we have been asked to demonstrate this. Obviously, this has been allowed under the ARR, but we have been asked to demonstrate and submit what are the findings. And then they will consider it as a mandatory requirement maybe for next time whenever we submit our plans for the distribution network upgrade. So that's what I wanted to update. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That looks very progressive from the government's and DISCOM's purview. So now moving on, since we were talking a bit on EVs, let's hear it from Mr. P.K. Banerjee, Executive Director, Technical CM. Sir, EVs are becoming very crucial for the decarbonization, and many states have come up with their own new EV policies. So how do you think, with this policy framework, with the government announcements and with the new PLI push, how do you think that Make in India is really going to happen? And how much of ancillary development do you really see? Because that would be crucial for the complete ecosystem to be developed. So what are your views and opinions on that?
Thank you. On behalf of Indian automobile industry, I am very pleased to be here on the session which is talking about electrification of transportation. I think the electrification of transportation is more to do with the decarbonization of transportation, and the routes of decarbonization could be different one depending upon the national priorities. So from India's standpoint of view, we have a commitment to the international forum, that is the COP21, the 33% reduction on the carbon GHG has to happen on the base year of 2005. But the national priorities dictated by the energy security, import imbalance management, and the local pollution mitigation, like in Delhi, you have a crisis during the winter time. So, because our 100 cities are actually in a very polluted list, therefore, our priorities are dictated by these factors. Now, electrification is an easier route, but you know that majority of our 75% of electric production is happening from the coal. Thereby, it's moving the actually source of pollution from city to the power plant is the situation as of now. But with the availability of renewable energy, wind, solar, and maybe hydrogen subsequently, we can always overcome that challenge of well-to-wheel issues. However, as far as the question goes of electrification, the acquisition cost of the vehicle is higher at this point in time because of the battery cost, which is more than the 40 to 50% of the vehicle cost. With the battery cost coming down, I think the adoption, acceptance of the electric vehicles will go up. But the penetration of the electric vehicle will happen on the segment which are actually giving you the return of investment early on. So for example, three-wheelers, taxis, buses, these are the segment where you will find electrification will happen faster. But we are in a cusp of a time which is actually post-COVID scenario. So you may realize that our current three-wheeler sale has gone back to 20 years because people are hesitant to sit in three-wheelers, because the environment is not conducive where three-wheelers are making money. So as it is being said that priority sector lending should happen. Without priority sector lending, because the electric vehicles have a higher acquisition cost, at the same time bankers are not willing to put the risk on NPAs. So there has to be some mechanism created which should support these initiatives. The PLI announced yesterday wherein 26,058 crore rupees will be actually disbursed for high advanced technologies, particularly electric and hydrogen, over a period of 5 years, is a very good initiative of Government of India. Also, the advanced chemistry cells investment for gigafactory manufacturing is being promoted. Also, every state government, we had an interaction with Maharashtra's EV policy day before. So Maharashtra is also coming up with a very advanced EV promotion scheme. Not only you will be getting over and above what is being talked about in FAME 2, over and above you will get the money, and also in societies where you have a possibility of infrastructure creation, you will be given 2% discount on your property tax. So in overall, if you see, in parking area also you will have a priority. So EV penetration, India is now ready to take off, and you will see very faster adoption of EV in particular segments. And I am sure that with support from different stakeholders, including the priority sector lending and customers' confidence building, EV penetration will be seeing very great push in India. Thank you.
Awesome. So that has been a very positive statement on talking about EV penetration and how the policy framework is being done by governments across the states to really improve these mass adoption of EVs. Let's see one more quickly. A thing that comes to my mind was when I was reading Haryana's policy. Haryana's policy also mentions about net metering compulsory with battery energy storage. So what are your views, Abhishek Ranjanji, on this, where they talk about, a mandatory storage of 25% for a 2 hours backup? How do you think these kind of policies would really impact the mass adoption of energy storage on a larger scale?
Yeah, this reminds me of a mandate by, say, CPUC in California, where they have given a storage targets also. So the utilities over there, this is about homes or individual consumers, but there the utilities have a target. Just like you have our RPO, they have a renewable purchase standards, RPS. Apart from that, energy efficiency target as well as storage target. So yes, in California, for example, the storage has been driven because one of the driving factor had been the mandate. Now coming forward to Haryana, yes, this could definitely give a push to the storage market. But the point is, if this mandate comes along with the downward revision in the cost, that will be helpful. Otherwise, compliance of this might not be there. That is number one. Number two, the change in the net metering regulation, for example, which has happened, that is changing the complete law. So if you talk about the net billing, the benefit to the consumer for exporting to the grid is now going down. So instead of exporting, the consumer can actually, store it in the storage. So this change in the net billing and net metering regulations, along with the decline in the prices of the storage, is definitely going to push this. And this is definitely a good move which the government has taken.
A follow-up question on that. We are very good at making policies, but how good would be at implementation of this? I'll give you a very nice example. A few days back, with the same Haryana policy, somebody came to me asking that, what if I just put, a 500 kilowatt system, and it is just for, to get my net metering passed. how do you think India needs to look into the implementation and verification of such things? Because policy making is very nice, and our thought leaders are doing a lot of work in the policy, but at the ground reality implementation, what do you think should be the insights for that?
No, the point is the end user should see value in it. For example, how will he see value? If there is a consumer, she is, say, 10 kilowatt sanction load consumer, and her electricity bill is something like that. Now, there would be policy imperatives like, for example, TOD rates or TOU rates. And when you talk about time of use rates, that rate is varying every hour or maybe 6-hour block in a particular day. So, if you want her to implement such kind of initiatives, let the status quo be violated. That means right now she is in a comfort zone. So now she is saying that, okay, net metering is giving me benefits. I am going forward to net billing where the rate at which you are getting paid for is much, much lesser than the cost of the battery if you install it, coupled with the TOD, TOU rates. So the policy which is being forwarded has to be clubbed with another way that is called TOD, TOU rate. So once TOD, TOU rate along with this policy and raising the cost for the consumer to export into the grid, that will push her to go forward such implementation. You can't monitor them and you can't force them because that will not solve the purpose. It has to be, what I feel is clubbed along with a carrot. The carrot is the TOU rate and TOD rate basis which she is going to reduce the bill. So that will help that.
Right, that was a nice way of looking at things. Now, let me just quickly extrapolate this question. Like here we are talking on the smaller scale and distributed storage. Let's have this similar thing, on a large scale and a centralized storage. So, I would like to have this question to Dr. YBK Reddy ji. According to you, what policy and regulatory interventions are required to actually unlock and unleash the complete energy storage potential? And a follow-up question to that as well. And how far do you think implementation of these policies and are required to really have the ground-up benefit for all of us?
Policies, you were saying that in the large scale, Government of India has already came out with the policy that if any storage system is used more than 70% of renewable energy, again transmission cost waiver is already there, that is recently announced. And to promote the pump storage type of thing, already hydropower obligation, that type of policy is there. And soon storage obligations also may come. And while discussing in the larger committee, as I mentioned before, so we also seeing that there are many policy issues also to be solved and regulatory issues also to be solved. Let us say we are setting up a standalone storage. That storage can be taken, charged through the surplus energy, and who will pay for that transmission cost and if it is being used by a independent developer. So will it attract any cross subsidy charge, any other charges? All the things need to be clarified. That we are working on the policy document also, and also for making a large scale bid also, for bidding also we need to frame the guidelines. We have almost finalized the guidelines, some final tweaking is happening. Guidelines also will be out, draft guidelines for this. And another important thing in this large scale storage is that providing ancillary services to the grid operator. So for that also CRC came out with the draft guidelines that will also be finalized soon. That is a major thing happening in the battery sector. So many things are happening right now, and we are still working with the regulators, working with various system operators to before launching this the 6 gigawatt capacity, will be clearing the policy from the policy front and regulatory front also. In the distribution level, anyway, Abhishek said that some DISCOMs are taking proactive steps. Maybe centralized guidelines also may come for the promotion of storage in the large scale, in the distribution level also.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for those insights. And now when we talk of the large-scale storage, I'd like to ask Milan ji on this, that when do you think we can actually see the large-scale storage adoption in India, given the prices are still a hitch, not a bottleneck, or rather not a deterrent, but they are still something as a speed breaker which we need to still overcome. So how do you think what is required to actually get the mass scale adoption of large storages, maybe for the CNI sectors or maybe for the grid utilities or ancillary services? How do you think India can proceed in that way?
So, Dr. Rasi, what I see is that the large scale adoption, I think besides the policy intervention and support which our other panel members have talked, the other thing which will happen is the pull factor. What is this pull factor? This pull factor is requirement of round the clock power, say for data centers or for green hydrogen, or say like I see the EVs, they have green nameplates, but unless the source of power changes to green, I think that will be the true thing to happen, that its source is also green. And one point to add here to what Mr. Banerjee told about confidence building for adoption, what he said is all perfect. But one point which I see is that another enabler or the confidence building measure will be infrastructure for charging, which is very, very important, because none of us want to get stranded on the middle of a road. So there is going to be a lot of pull factors, I will say. Green hydrogen, data centers, round the clock power requirement, green mobility, and all this is definitely going to create a huge demand. Now this is one segment. Other segment is that, as we heard so far, with renewable energy penetration increasing, again we are having a compulsion. There's no choice. Otherwise we take the risk of affecting our grid itself altogether. And that is going to be very, very costly for a country like ours, and definitely all efforts should be done to ensure that we don't get into a situation where we make our grid vulnerable, because we are just coming out of these challenges of COVID. The growth is on the right path. Entire world is looking at us as a model, and where we have this challenge as well as the opportunity to form right policies, right financial interventions to ensure that we really take renewable energy, and not that, even the battery energy storage, not just for mobility but large scale storage, to a level where it becomes part of our power infrastructure, whether for rightly utilizing the transmission network or bringing the overall cost of energy down. I think demand factor will be another factor which is going to bring down the ultimate prices of battery energy system low, and that will further help the adoption. So it's like a circle we are seeing.
So okay, we have a chicken and egg loop out there. And when we talk of reliability, when we talk of confidence building, when we talk of EV adoption, sir, this question is directed to PK Banerjee ji. Here I would want to ask you one question of the very recent fire that took place in Pune, in one of the warehouses. Everyone knows what's happened. But then how do we build in an ecosystem where we keep ourselves safe from such incidences? Because, fire incidences are not just in India, but they have happened abroad in large scale storages as well, and EVs as well. So what step India needs to take to understand and protect and for the safety guidelines, so that we can learn from others and not make the same mistake? So what do you think, what can protect India from avoiding such instances to come in future and build the confidence for EVs and storage systems into the minds of the consumers?
I think it's a very, very important aspect of technology promotion, adoption, and sustainability. It is very clear and understood that if it's a lithium-ion battery, and that too if it is a NMC versus LFP chemistry, there have been instances of challenge. India is actually tropical, hotter climate, so the battery thermal management is another issue when it comes to transportation. I am not talking about the storage, but per se we are aware about the challenges, what happens, what kind of thermal runaway issues crop up, if there is a short circuit in one of the cell, thereby we have actually very, very robust standard which has been created in India, wherein we have a specific nail penetration test mandatory, so that whenever any battery is approved, it is subjected to, welcome sir, I think we should, yeah, we should welcome. Yeah. So welcome sir, yeah.
We have with us Shri Alok Singh ji, Police Commissioner, Gautam Budh Nagar, Noida. He has been very proactively supporting transport and renewable energy in his tenure, making eco-friendly traffic parks and organizing Clean Traffic Month every year to promote sound and pollution-free transport, to have a quiet traffic on behalf of the Noida Police. A very warm welcome to you, sir, on our behalf. So, we would like to hear, the gathering would like to hear some notes from you. Oh, should I? Can I? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So, would you want to continue? Or, okay. So now that we've heard from PK Banerjee ji on, having robust standards, on having a quality ecosystem, I think recycling and reuse are another important aspect of battery systems and for EV components as well, and financing around them would play a very critical and crucial role. Today, as we all know, that recycling for lithium is a liability model, and liability model is something which is not very welcome by India in any case. So over to you, Vaibhav ji, to understand how recycling, reuse and financing around the EV sector could change the scenario.
So thanks, Dr. Rashi, for the question. So for all of you over here, if you look at the batteries, what these batteries are actually. So batteries is a box where you have some chemicals which store the electricity, and once they are used, produce some sort of electricity. You could look at the batteries that are there in your inverters, and similarly in the phones. But these batteries also have the elements of very rare earth metals, that could be lithium and others, and they capture the majority of the value of in a battery. So let's say 30-40% of the value of a battery is these rare earth metals, and these are very rare. These are so rare that in India does not really have majority of them, and these are found in destinations like Chile or in China or in Cambodia out there, or Congo, I would say. So what if India is looking at mass adoption of EVs and mass adoption of storages that are based on chemicals, this recycling would be really, really important out there. So recycling, you could just recover the 90-95% of the materials out there from the batteries. But the problem is there are not enough batteries out there as of today that could be used to recover the materials. And what would be the value of these? So how the financing could, once you reach a scale, let's say a penetration beyond a few percentage points in EVs, that's reaching around 2% as of today, or 4 or 5%, and the adoption starts increasing and the mass scale storage also starts increasing, you will feel many companies that would be looking into recycling, because even if you look at the scrappage policy, the major point is that you could reuse the metals. And similarly for these batteries, this would be really important, that if you could reuse these metals and minerals out there. And so the government will need to promote some financing elements to it, how these could be recovered. So some of the methods based on the chemistry, you could recover as high as 95%. And if you just want to have a look at the most profitable of the startups in USA, run by one of the co-founders of Tesla, is just based on recovering these materials or minerals out there. And and as pointed out, this is really going to be important in future, and the government through some policies that could allow the initial setup cost or recovering the initial investment cost once there is a penetration out there could really help us out there. So that could be that's my intervention as of now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now that we have understood recycling, we have understood financing models, we have looked at many, many perspectives of energy storage today on how DISCOMs regulators are looking into implementation and adoption of energy storage throughout the value chain proposition today. So now let's hear from our honorable guest today here, the Honorable Police Commissioner from Noida, Gautam Budh Nagar. Sir, your opinion and how do you think EV adoption could change the whole scenario? So we would love to hear from you, sir. Yes, please, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome on a very wet afternoon. Usually by middle of September, the monsoon starts receding. But today morning when I was going through my reports, it indicated that 26 districts in various parts of northern India have a yellow and a red alert. 26 for yellow alert and 10 for the red alert. Why this tectonic shift in the pattern of monsoons? There's a huge debate about how the climate has changed, how mercilessly we have used the fossil fuels, leaving our big carbon footprints everywhere, and led to a very wet September afternoon as we gather here today. I'm told Ms. Mani Khurana, the lead World Bank battery storage program, she has joined us virtually. I also welcome my co-panelist, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, Dr. Y.B.K. Reddy, Mr. Milan Kumar, Mr. P.K. Banerjee, Mr. Vaibhav Pratap Singh, and of course, the moderator, Dr. Rashi Gupta. It's a highly technical session, and I think I'm the least qualified to be on the panel. So my views would more be like of a journalist rather than of the specialists who are on my left. It's a common knowledge that banana republics are no havens for innovation. No enterprise would care to put its money in a place which is overrun by criminals, local heavyweights, and unreliable or very ineffective government bodies. Safety, stability, and state of law and order are fundamentals on which any long-term policy of industrialization, urbanization, and development thrive and prosper. It is fundamental for the promotion of ease of business. Perhaps the union government has been actively promoting its flagship missions of safe city and smart city in very close tandem, because only a safe city has a potential to grow into a smart city. We at Gautam Budh Nagar feel very proud that it is one of the North India's most well-planned, green, and a business-friendly city. Over the years, talents of all varieties from city architecture, the engineers, the administrators, and of course, the citizens have carved out this city. And what was needed was a switch to a more citizen-centric policing system. Last year, a commissionerate system was launched in two of the districts of Uttar Pradesh, one being Noida, another being the state capital. The commissionerate system in most parts of the country is a response to increasingly complex policing requirements in large cities and urban agglomerations, these which are characterized by dense populations, high volume of business activity, large scale migrations, and a proliferation of organized crime due to a very hot real estate market. Gautam Budh Nagar is one of the fastest growing districts in India, is characterized by all these ailments. Since the inception of Commissionerate in last January, we have been leveraging a very judicious mix of additionally trained manpower and latest technological solutions to provide customized and citizen-centric police services to the residents of Gautam Budh Nagar. Both as a citizen as well as an administrator, I feel proud to see the massive strides that this district is making. It's becoming a world-class cosmopolitan city, particularly with the coming up of Jewar Airport. The work has already started, and it is supposed to be one of the finest examples of aviation and merger with a railway network. So this is going to be one of the major hubs for the transport as well as for the storage. Storage not limited to what we are discussing here, but storage in a very loosely defined term. And initiatives like e-mobility center and the launch of electric vehicles will soon ply in this district, and they are going to be the trendsetters for much needed green approach to the development. But with this development, I would also like to mention about the very poor air quality that we have here in Gautam Budh Nagar. Only recently, because of the rains, yesterday the air quality AQI was 61. But come November, December and the winters, this may go to very hazardous parameters. It may cross 400 or 500. Normally under those circumstances, anywhere in the world, the cities are shut down. But like everything else, it's become the normal day-to-day activity. Things carry on along with this kind of air quality. To improve the air quality of this growing district, the green policy that we all are ushering upon, let me cite you a very poorly reported, far-sighted policy. I don't know how many of you know, but the first three-wheeler, which was an electric three-wheeler, was made in 1996. And it was made by a very well-known firm known by the name of Scooters India Limited. And let me tell you, this was in 1996. Almost 25 years ago, Scooters India Limited made the first three-wheeler, which was known as Vikram Safa, and it was made in Lucknow. So that's how the vision has unfurled itself. And now we are at a stage where the government policy about the use of EVs has taken a very concrete shape. Lucknow is one among the 10 cities earmarked for a pilot project on multimodal electric public transport under the FAME, as you all know, the faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles in India. And the state government of the Uttar Pradesh enacted the electric vehicles policy in 2018. We are also committed to EV at the rate of 30, that is, the electric vehicles constituting almost 30% of the sales of the total vehicles sold by the year 2030. The policy aims to establish UP as a preferred destination for attracting investments in electric vehicle manufacturing, creating employment opportunities in this arena, promote EVs in public transport, promote EV battery and charging equipment manufacturing, and creating an overall conducive ecosystem. I have no doubt that Gautam Budh Nagar has the potential to be a front runner in the implementation of this policy, and it would lead by example for the rest of the state. This is possible through dynamic and committed leadership and through the awareness of Noida's engaged citizenry. I would also like to mention that ease of mobility, we believe, is a prerequisite for any cosmopolitan district like Gautam Budh Nagar, which can significantly facilitate its growth potential. And as I was talking to Abhijit, with the coming up of the EV charging stations, this would certainly facilitate the ease of mobility from various parts of NCR. On behalf of the Police Commissionerate, I pledge my complete support to this initiative and those in the future, and I assure you that our full commitment to the smooth plying of these vehicles. I wish the team all success in launch and scaling of this beautiful project. Thank you so much.
No, you were not absolutely in place. You were not out of place, because we heard it from the consumer and the and from the implementation perspective. We all have been talking from different perspectives here, from the DISCOM's perspective, from the automobile manufacturer's perspective, from the energy storage from SECI's perspective, and then financing models. But you have given us a perspective of the implementation and the ground reality, that how a user can actually change the scenario of EVs. Thank you so much, sir, for that. And with this, we come to a wonderful end of this session today, wherein we have a lot of insights to take away from. One, wherein we have a stupendous of 6 gigawatts of energy storage to look forward to. We have robust testing and standards coming up, which will change the scenario of the EV domain, that we really are looking for decarbonization. We have learned that, yes, we have to look forward towards innovative financial models. We have to look towards recycling and reuse of the batteries. We have heard from the World Bank, wherein they're talking of billions of investments and coming up with the new funds for energy storage. We have heard from the DISCOMs, as in how they are proactively implementing energy storage for improvement of and benefit of the entire ecosystem. So together, we all have to collectively work towards completely decarbonization of and to develop a sustainable, robust, and a resilient ecosystem with renewable energies and energy storage. So this transformational decade that we all are going through will change the way power sector is perceived. And today's this conference and the session that we had is a demonstration and just the beginning to see this transformation. Thank you so much.